Hi, and welcome to the Future of Dermatology podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Fara Kamangar, board certified dermatologist. We are here to talk about anything and everything dermatology related. You'll hear from me and my guests who are dermatologists, physicians, experts, scientists, residents, and medical students in the field of dermatology. We publish weekly, so if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button and show us some love, and thank you for joining us. Hello, Danny. So today I'm so excited for this episode because we have Danny Estrella, personal trainer extraordinaire on the podcast. This is very different, but so important to the rest of the things we've been talking about. And the importance is we've had a lot of sessions about where we've talked about in terms of biomodulation, how you can change different parts of your body around. For dermatology, we do things like try to build your collagen and all of that over time. And Danny's expertise is how to build muscle, which is so important because of many reasons. But one, of course, longevity. We all now know muscle is really kind of the main indicators of functional longevity, how functional you are kind of later on in life and all the activities you're able to do. So that's the main thing that applies to everybody. Then on the other scale, to our dermatology patients and providers, it applies to also if you're losing muscle mass and body composition, it's harder for us to even do all the other things we do, like try to build your collagen and everything else. And then for the physicians who listen to this podcast, one of the things me and Danny always talk about is one of my reasons for kind of trying to stay fit is just to be able to practice the field of medicine because it's so physical and having to go to clinic all day in and day out. And you notice over time, the doc's going to decrease their hours because they're probably just getting fatigued because of decreased muscle mass. But basically just wanted to have Danny on to talk about all the amazing things he does because there are so many kind of like almost fitness fads out there. I've been a victim to many of them. I think when I went to see Danny for the first time, I had kind of decided, okay, this is the time I'm getting fit. And I had done like an 8-week boot camp where I was working out 3 to 4, even 5 days a week for 2 months, did a body analysis before and after, and nothing had changed in my body composition. And Danny kind of really nicely explained to me why. So thank you so much, Danny, for being here. And first, actually, before we even delve into all the science, did you want to take a few minutes just to let us know about yourself and how you got into your fitness journey and where you are now?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Fara. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. Where can I start? How I kind of got into all this is, man, I was like 18 and I think I was coming out of college and I was just, I needed an outlet. I needed something to do. And I was just coming out of a big kind of like bad breakup, if I'm being 100% honest.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I need to better myself. I need to get myself better. I need to get this revenge bod or I don't know what's going on, So it was kind of me searching for something to do and finding a path. And then eventually I kind of figured out how much it helped me and helped mentally, physically, and just kind of just stepping into this like fitness realm that I then realized I needed to share this with other people, and if it helped me out so much, then imagine how many other people out there that this could help out as well. It's kind of the way that I kind of thought about it and what really kind of got me started in this whole fitness journey myself. And now fast forward like 8+ years later, here we are, as a independent personal trainer out of Belmont, working with Origin at the moment. And yeah, my fitness has also kind of transformed over the years from like just working out to now kind of going along the lines of powerlifting and lifting a lot of heavy weights. But I've also been a victim to these fads that you were saying a little while ago. I've tried it all, you name it. And that's kind of what I'm here to do, is kind of break some of those down and make it as simple as possible for us to get to the direction we want to get towards,
Oh, that's fantastic. And yet I think everyone's reasons for getting into it are totally different. Although a lot of us probably share similar patterns. Like there's like different times in life where we're just kind of not feeling ourselves and we're like, man, we need to make some kind of difference. And then it's so important to kind of focus on our body because you're running around all day. So one of the things I've kind of learned with you the last even year or two is if your body is not fully like optimized, you're just kind of burning on fumes. And so you can't fix any other aspect of your life if you just kind of don't have that down. I'd love to even maybe start at, you kind of break it down, because many people also think with fitness, it's like calories in, calories out. And it's not even that it's much more complex than that, but it's just like kind of different than that. And you really, from the muscle building world, have kind of showed me that. Like for me, the reason I did that 8-week program that was very cardio based and nothing in my body changed was because cardio was not targeting to cause any biomodulation or change your body, right? So I'd love to kind of just hear rationale and how you kind of break that down. Because when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, and it totally clicked.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's see, where can I start with that? It's the way I like to explain it just in general and to most of my clients is think about it kind of like trying to input a program or you're trying to get a computer to do something, right? You type in a couple things and the computer does something. Boom, it pops out and it pops out a message or whatever. The way that we do that as humans is then by giving our muscle or our body kind of a amount of stimuli to want to spark change or make change. And if we don't give it enough of that, then we don't end up making that change. So when it comes down to terms of like when you're doing cardio or doing a bunch of cardio and what was going on there, then we were probably really doing a whole lot of movement, not changing our nutrition. And then at some point we kind of get used to it and we need a little bit more. And then there's only so much more cardio that we can actually do. That makes it so much more harder for us to actually move forward in our health. And in terms of calories in, calories out, right? Without getting too deep into the rabbit hole of like what the fitness industry is just out there in general, the idea that they've kind of put out there is that we have to eat as very little bit of food as we can and move as much as we can and be as thin and as skinny as possible. And when you try that out, you pretty soon find out that, okay, this sucks. Okay, this is hard. So the way that I've kind of like now jumped, or the direction that I take with my clients and myself in general right now, is how can we get ourselves to feel our best, be our best, and be our strongest self, and just go about our day to day. Because, for example, like Dr. Fara, right? You're over here like having to work like crazy hours, and you're also on top of it having to raise your children as well, and then on top of it all these other things that you're doing. So it's like, how do we then get you to do that? And that kind of starts off from making sure that we give ourselves enough food and making sure that we fuel ourselves the right way. We're strong enough to be able to do the things that we're asked of us. And it gets a little bit more complicated than that, but it's kind of in general what we want to get towards.
Yeah, it's such a good way you put it, actually. Like if you take me like as a case example, but many of my colleagues kind of fall into that too. If you kind of follow that, what society is telling you is, okay, eat less. So you're exhausted and unfueled, like your battery's low, right? Mm-hmm. You're like low charge. On top of that though, what you also need to do is go run more. And one thing issue is really interesting with physiology, you've explained to me that with cardio, yeah, you get some benefits, but then your body actually adapts pretty quickly. So then you have to add, like you said, like more hours. And with a normal kind of life where you have a full day of work, kids and all that, and you've been starving yourself all day, you're like doing some weird fasting. We didn't start eating till 2 p.m. or something, some version of that. And then on top of that, you're like, well, no, now go run half an hour, now run 1 hour. Now it's impossible, right? And it's also not even a formula that's gonna get you anywhere. So I think that fact that we talked about, I think one of the first things you said to me was, you need to eat more. And I was like, excuse me? How dare you? But it's true. And I think I eat way more now and I'm in better shape. So I'd love to kind of like, if you want to explain that some more of, and it's not just going out there and eating junk, obviously, but the pro muscle foods. And like you said, lifting the weight. So then your muscle has the food around, but then it also gets the signal, okay, now use this food and turn it into muscle, which is a probably simplistic way of explaining the biomodulatory ways of muscle building, but it kind of is, right? That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about right now is the chart that I've kind of brought up a couple times where we're talking about total daily energy expenditure, where it kind of comes down to BMR. There is NEAT, so BMR, basal metabolic rate, NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, essentially like the amount of calories you burn at rest. Then you have your thermic effect of food, which is the amount of calories that you end up um, burning just by digesting food. And then you have your exercise activity thermogenesis. So calories burned via just exercise. And when you're kind of given this message of eat as little bit as food as possible, that has an effect on that total daily energy expenditure, or how many calories your body kind of like expends and just burns throughout the day. And the body has a weird way of kind of just adapting to what you give it. It's
Mm-hmm.
a phenomenal kind of machine, is a way to put it, where it can just adapt to the type of stimuli that you give it. And in this case, what it will do is, like, if you're eating very little food and you're moving as much as you can, you're just going to run yourself down into the ground. And what ends up happening is when you end up giving yourself that little amount of food or that little amount of calories, it also has an effect on how much we're able to actually move, are wanting to, like, if we're feeling tired, we're feeling lethargic or motivated, uh, that ends up happening as well, just because we don't have that energy. But when you start eating some more food and you put more calories in your system, then you get the other type of signals from your body and your brain telling you, hey, we're ready to go. Let's go hit this workout. Let's go ahead and run. You're feeling a whole lot better. And now you're able to kind of go about your day a little bit more with more enthusiasm. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think a lot of people kind of describe that phenomenon too of you kind of, I think the term might be set point, where you basically, like, your body figures out a weight. Is that kind of right? Like, it figures out a weight and it does everything possible to keep you at that. And that's basically because we've kind of all turned ourselves into this kind of almost starvation mode, not on purpose. And we think we're eating enough, but you're just under nourishing your body. You're not giving like the nutrients you need, the right amount of proteins. So your body's spending a lot of energy when it should be just allowing you to do the things you do, go to work, play with your kids, have energy for exercise. It's spending a lot of energy just keeping you like at that steady state, right? So the kind of that was actually kind of an interesting thing too for me to understand that, okay, you need to just put a lot more nutrition in your body to build muscle. And we kind of know that. And that makes sense to me as an analogy to when we're, like, let's say, building collagen in someone's face, for example, or other parts of the body. That's another area that you really do need to give it the right amount of, you just need the amino acids around. I mean, you can do as many procedures as you want, but if you're undernourished and you don't have the building blocks, you're not going to create that protein or that molecule. So it's really kind of really interesting how it's connected. And then the other piece you spoke about is giving that muscle stimuli. So this was like a barrier for me to get over, because I, as a small person, don't lift weights
For now.
and,
For now.
and don't lift heavy weights, but I do now. Exactly. I'm starting to now, but that's also one of those things that kind of all the ads and everything, you don't see the celebrities in the gym doing heavy weights, things like that, but they are on the back end. Like, the bodies they have is because they're doing that. But then they might show a picture of themselves doing like some light exercise or some brand named exercise. And then so in your brain, you think, well, okay, if I go to that branded place and do that activity, my body will end up looking, kind of, I'll have that health and longevity and all that too. So, yeah, I'd love to for you to get to a little bit of that. You just need to lift heavy weights. I mean, I think you just kind of said you just have to do it, right? You just have to give that
Yeah.
stimulus.
Yeah, because we could be, like, for example, like you were saying, going to these classes, or we see something online and we're trying it out for ourselves, or maybe this, what's a interesting one out there? 5-minute ads, 10-minute ads, and you're thinking you're going to get your ads in like 5 minutes. But that's not necessarily how it all works. These things kind of happen over time. And what you were mentioning earlier is we have to give you the right amount of stimuli to spark change. And if we don't get enough stimuli, then we're just kind of just moving our bodies and exercising. The way I've kind of explained it as well is think about it kind of like just moving around, and then there's training. There's a form of exercise that just gets you to move and sweat, which just accomplishes getting you moving and sweating. And then there's a form of exercise that actually methodically gets you to build muscle, build strength, and get strong, which in the long run kind of has a lot more benefits than just kind of moving around. But to do that is you really have to understand like intensity, and you really have to understand how much you can push and how much should you push, because not every single workout is also going to be 100% super hard. But there is a middle ground where you can kind of work at, where you do build some strength, you do build some muscle mass to get there in a easier way. Hopefully that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just kind of going back to the chart you kind of mentioned too with the muscle mass, but in terms of the basal metabolic rate, I think that's an interesting one that I think people kind of get it, but not really when when it comes to practice, because the basal metabolic rate is like, for example, I'll say one of the things you hear is always, oh, well, your metabolism slows as you age. But really what's happening is you're just losing body composition, you're losing the muscle mass, and your muscle burns a lot of calories, right? So if you have, like, I'm just making numbers, but 1% or 2% or 3% more body muscle mass than fat, you're going to just burn, everything's going to be more efficient, right? You'd have more mitochondria, which are your like powerhouse, your energy production. So really it's, in theory, there's not, just speaking of muscle and not the rest of the body, but there's really no difference between maybe like a 20-year-old and a 7-year-old if they keep up that same muscle mass in terms of the things muscles do. I'm sure there's other differences that happen. And I see it in my clinic too. Like we see 30 to 40 patients a day of all ages. And I have patients that are in their 60s and really out of shape and with diabetes, terrible blood sugars because they don't have the muscle to build all that and burn off all that glucose. So they go through their insulin really quickly. And then I have like 85-year-olds who have a 6-pack and are still skiing. So it's like a really obvious path of, if you keep your muscle mass, you will have a certain kind of outcome functionally and, kind of be able to dance at your great grandchild's wedding versus having a walker, falling, breaking hips, low bone density, kind of all of the above. So, but yeah, like I looked just exactly that area with the basal metabolic rate. I know sometimes you spend some time talking about that and how important it is just to have kind of that, how important it is to have that higher muscle mass for that reason.
Yeah. Basal metabolic rate. Well, just for those who don't really like know what BMR is, essentially or the way I like to explain it as well is, think about it like the amount of calories that your body requires if you did absolutely nothing. Like we just lay down in bed, didn't even flinch, didn't even blink, didn't even move. That's how many calories your body kind of requires to just kind of keep itself up and running the entire time. Now, most people in general kind of move around. They work 8 hours, 10 hours. Some other people maybe work 16 hours. On top of it, they exercise and they do all these other things. So your requirements for the amount of calories that you need in your day-to-day are going to be higher than your BMR. But we use BMR kind of like as a reference point to then understand and give out or recommend a certain amount of calories. Because if you go down too low, then a lot of different things kind of happen, and a lot of bad things kind of happen that we don't want to happen if you go too low in calories. But like you were saying, as you age, as you like progress in life, we are losing muscle mass to some kind of degree, and it's just important for us to start as soon as possible for us to be able to put on as much muscle mass, because then that basal metabolic rate is going to go up higher. And it's going to allow us to then live a more joyful kind of energetic kind of life. The more muscle mass we have, the higher our BMR is, and the higher our BMR is kind of typically means you can eat more food, which I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy.
Yeah, 100%. And then another episode that we had, we talked about Ozempic, like the weight loss drugs, but any kind of weight loss really, because weight loss is like so advertised in our culture. We're like, just lose weight, lose weight. But then when we do our body composition analyses, you really look at where you're losing weight. So if you're just losing weight, the numbers going down, you've probably also lost a lot of muscle. So you're going against yourself. Like if our goal is, okay, keep the muscle you have, but actually maybe even grow that muscle, pure just weight loss without knowing your metrics, it's probably a bad idea, right? I guess you're.
Oh yeah, 1000%. Kind of like I think we're referring to is our in-body scan, right?
Yeah.
Our body composition just in general. A lot of the times, like someone comes in and they are looking to lose weight, right? And we're like, yes, we're going to help you get there. But most of the time when you end up losing weight, you want to make sure you lose the right kind of weight, and you maybe even like put on some weight, but in this case, put on some more muscle mass. Because you can go into, for example, what everything else out there is saying is eat very little food, move as much as you can. And then you realize when you do a body composition scan, oh, there has been no change in the amount of body fat that I have, but there is changes in the muscle mass that I have, and which can then get into more dangerous kind of territory later on. So being able to track it and understand where those metrics are at is going to be key, just to know, like, am I actually moving closer to healthy? Am I actually getting healthier by doing this, or am I getting unhealthy by losing weight? Right? Because that can happen too.
No, totally. And like one of the things that we chat about sometimes is you go to your physician's office and you have your like vitals, blood pressure, you get your labs checked. We always should have this as like our last part of the vital signs. Every once in a while, everyone should just get their just basic even body composition. And then every once in a while also know where the bone and everything else is doing. But at the very least, what percent is fat, what percent is muscle, because so much of your metabolism, your glucose, your cholesterol metabolism is just based around that composition. So we keep, like as physicians, trying to fix those numbers and looking at the labs, but kind of missing this opportunity to, well, why don't we get you 2% more muscle, which is not easy to do actually, because I've been working with Danny trying to do this. It's difficult to do. Well, some people make it look easy. So genetically, some people it's easy for them, right? But
yeah.
For me, I would say it's been like it's not difficult, but it's a thing, like finding time. Danny's like, no, it's difficult.
It's hard. It's simple in like saying it, like, oh, I just got to eat a little bit more and make sure that I can work out consistently. But then we're dealing with a whole bunch of different other factors that can kind of come into play, like work schedule, family schedule, and just a lot of other things that might get in the way. But finding a simple and concise way to get it done is a key here, at least for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so one of the crazy things I've done is, so you do these competitions well, maybe competition is not even the right word, right? It's more like a meet. It's not really people competing against others.
It is a competition.
Themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a competition. I'm trying to make it lesser in my head because I have signed up for the one in October, which is like terrifying. And I think I initially asked you, and your text was very like, yeah, I should actually put that up. Your text was something you're like, you could do it, but you have to be very, very serious. So what am I getting myself into, Danny? What is this October meet? And how can a 40-year-old mom of 3 get into shape for the next 4 months?
Yeah. Well, essentially what we're getting into is a competition against a bunch of other people. But I like to kind of like what you were saying earlier, is it's a competition against yourself, really a competition against the version of ourselves that probably puts off our fitness, that puts off our nutrition, that is like, I'm going to go work and do all this stuff first because this is super important. But what happens when you really then take the initiative to make fitness your priority, right? And that's kind of what we're testing, is the two versions of ourselves, or that's what we're competing against. The version of us that puts our health and fitness to the side, and the version of us that really takes our fitness really seriously. And for the next 12 weeks, essentially, we're going to be trying to build on as much muscle and strength as we can, and get you to test out our lifts, which are our squats, our bench, and our deadlift, where we'll get a chance to then try out some heavy lifts so that you don't show up on that day and be like, what am I doing? So the next few weeks are going to be like trying to get you to gain the confidence and to be able to show up on that day as best as you can and as best as Fara can. And what that entails for you, might look a little bit different from like what a normal kind of or a very big competitor is going to do, which might mean work out 5 times a day for them, eat a ton of food, and rest as much as they can. But for Dr. Fara, it might look a little bit differently since we have some other things that we're dealing with in our day to day. So we'll come together and come up with a plan for that soon as well too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think if nothing else, it'll just be like a good thing for my kids to laugh at. So there's value in
Or
that.
be inspired.
Or be inspired. Hopefully the latter.
You never know.
Well, one of the two.
Yeah.
One of the two will happen. Yeah. And actually, you touched on another important point. So much of it is kind of mental. I mean, especially for me, because I'm kind of a wuss. I'm not like one of those, adrenaline junkies and let's do this, lift heavy weights. I've always been a cautious kid, cautious adult. So when you go, okay, now go lift that 105 pounds, somewhere my brain says, no, don't do that. And then you've explained to me a lot about that psychological neural connection of what your muscle, like you were saying, will at least get up to some of the higher weights before, so your brain knows you can at least do that. And you have a really great way of explaining the psychology behind it, like your muscles almost, that you have that neural connection between what you can actually, like what your muscles strength wise can do and what your brain tells your muscle their strength is.
It's a little weird because I think you've experienced it a couple times as well while we're training, where there's some days that we can do it and there's some days that we can't, and we're just like, what's going on? And then maybe like after a little bit of a pep talk, you're like, oh no, I can do this. And there is a big kind of psychological factor behind it as well too, is you got to go into every single one of these lifts like you're going to be able to execute. Because if you, our brain has a big kind of like influence on how we perform, what we're able to do, how we're able to do it. And if we go into it already kind of defeated or scared or terrified, and our body will then, or our brain will then kind of believe that and go into it. So you almost have to go into it with every single attempt that you have with knowing that you will be successful, right?
Yeah, and I think that's it's especially hard thing for women as well. Not all women, because there's lots of actually female trainers where you are, and they're like fantastic. I just watch them and you just see like my jaw drop. They're so strong and they're lifting like weights like 2 or 3 times their own weight. But for the majority of women, you have that fear, because I think another thing society doesn't really tell women that you can lift weights or should lift weights. It's not something you see a lot. And then one of the things we've talked about and laughed about too is kind of the fear of getting like too bulky or like working out too much. And one of the things you've said to me in the past, which is really funny, is, that like you've been trying to get too bulky for like 10 years and it hasn't happened. So there's all these kind of psychological factors too, I think, for women around just like lifting heavy weights. It's not, I mean, we were kind of told, yeah, definitely go to yoga, go to Pilates, do this and that, but you don't get a lot of that messaging that like, no, this is for you and you won't die if you lift that heavy weight.
Yeah. Typically it's not something that most women kind of jump towards because they're afraid of kind of getting big and bulky and, or even getting hurt is in general what we would hear out there. But if you do this safely and you understand how to do these movements, there'll be no problem. And then we're saying about putting on too much muscle. It takes a while. It takes a long time. I myself have been trying to get bulky for a while, and it's taken about 8+ years. And I still don't think I'm where I want to be at, or I am as bulky as I can be at. So this takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication to get there.
Yeah, it's actually really funny, that misconception that people have that like, oh, if I just, do weights for a few months, I'm going to get too bulky. And then after you do it for a while, you realize how hard it is to actually put on even tiny bits of muscle. And it's just like, so it's completely false fear of getting too bulky is like not a risk for the average person. eating
No.
average amount of protein and doing average amount of workouts.
It's kind of like going out there, driving your car and expecting to go to NASCAR or Formula One the next day.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
not going to happen right away.
Yeah, absolutely. But this has been so great. And then we hopefully will inspire more people to kind of change how we think about fitness, change how we think about food, and just generic weight loss without data behind it as well. I find it with a lot of my colleagues, like a lot of the women that are maybe even 10 years older than me or out in practice, that's one of the main things they say is, I wish I could go back and start this journey earlier. Probably in your 20s and 30s, you're just so fit that you're not thinking about it as much and you still have the majority of your muscle mass. But as you get to the latter 30s and onwards, it really is a thing. And if you don't start early enough, it does make a huge difference. So I think it's just important to kind of get these, and it's things we kind of know, but we don't know it enough to put it in actual practice. So I think you can't talk about these things like too much at all. Like it's like we're not hearing enough of it.
That's right.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, so it's the Future of Dermatology podcast. We always ask what people are excited about for the future of dermatology. But of course, for you, it would be the future of anything really, but mostly the fitness world, muscle building, anything that you're specifically excited about or see changing in the future.
I think what I'm excited about in the fitness world is hopefully kind of bridging the gap between health professionals such as physicians, doctors, and trainers and personal trainers as well. Just because there is a lot of value that we can add and make helping people move towards healthy. But there's always been this kind of stigma behind, like, do we send people over to personal trainers? Can we trust this personal trainer? Can they actually help this person out? So hopefully in the near future with more individuals and more trainers like myself, Dario, and the rest of the Origin crew as well, who are leading this data-based type of exercising, we can see some changes in that realm.
100%. No, you said it so well, because there's like our appointments are 10, 15 minutes, and there's no way in a 10 to 15 minute visit once a year, twice a year, you can address all these changes that need to happen. But at the same time, we're giving out pills and things like that to fix metrics that are just a down the stream symptom of maybe your decreased muscle mass, your body composition not being correct, or running on fumes for 10 years because you've been just undernourished and trying to, do all this other stuff. So I think, that's definitely the direction it needs to go. And even in our dermatology clinic, we'll see patients that come in that kind of focus more on like maybe the face and that kind of area, and they want to do specific things. But when you look at the whole person, you're realizing that, okay, their sugars are all over the place. Their fat composition is not where it needs to be. So I think 100% these relationships are so important, and hopefully we can somehow weave them more in our kind of mainstay model of how we practice medicine. Thank you so much, Danny. Any final words or any?
No, I think that was well said. Everything was great. This is a great experience.
That was great. Thank you so much, Danny. It was so fun having you, and then I'll see you in the gym where you make me cry. That's he's nice here, but not. No, I'm kidding. Danny's always nice.
I will see you soon.
Sounds good.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to the Future of Dermatology podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button and share the podcast with your friends. The more you share and subscribe, the more we'll be able to grow and share our dermatology knowledge. If you have burning dermatology questions, feel free to leave them in the comment below, and we would love to address them in a future episode. And please note that this podcast is not intended to substitute for medical advice from your doctor.